So hey, hey there. So another thing that is unfortunate. So we all know you know um, AI is just all the rage, right? Um, Anywhere around the world, at least where the world's basically means United States, China, Europe. Um, and when I was in, I'm gonna say junior high. Like those old um, things you would get where you'd pay a penny for like 10 books or whatever, and then you were kind of on the hook to buy more books at a much higher price, obviously, for them to make that money back. But the I remember getting books on expert systems. So systems that weren't written to be artificial intelligence, because at the time it was just kind of, we were fine with the idea that this is a knowledge system, right? A knowledge database that doctors can go to and say, here are the symptoms that I'm having presented. What might that be, right? It wasn't about something understanding me talking to it as a person might, and then having some kind of cute response that may or may not be correct. You know, that's not what it was about. But then you had people like the one professor from MIT. There were plenty of others, but I remember neural networks. At least what I was reading were a big deal, and because I even wrote a program on Apple, if you can believe it. In I may have been at high school at that point, but where you would have objects. It doesn't matter, but you know they would have certain choices they can make. It was totally random, but you could weight those. The chance of those being the chosen path, right? And to some extent, that's kind of what neural networks are. They're trained on stuff and they get kind of used to it. You weight it so they'll kind of make the right choice or whatever, and so forth. And but back then, that was kind of with the idea of, can we take actual general intelligence and put it in a machine? Will we know how it functions? Even back then, it seemed pretty accepted that no, we're not going to really know what the fuck it's doing, because it's just going to be so complex. Like the neural network, it'll just kind of figure out a way to do it. Even today, um, I'm trying to think of the specifics of this, but something to the point of, people thought that large language models would step through making choices, right? Make little choices, get there. But they got to where they could watch it make the decisions, and it makes decisions in ways that people are just like, "Well, okay." It gets to the right answer, hopefully, in most cases. But that's not the interesting thing. The interesting thing is they don't really know why it's making choices in the ways that it is. That kind of stuff is fascinating to me still. Um, But like a problem is, you know, China came out with DeepSeek, I think it was the name of it, and that was like, sounds like it was basically a side project from an investment company. They just said, "Hey, you guys know computers. See if you can make this shit work." And for only a couple $1 million, which sounds like a lot, but we'll get to how much money American capitalists are paying for the AIs and all. American. That came out, and that was the big to do because a lot of the American large language models, though the people that own those or whatever, were complaining because saying, "Hey, they're taking our our results basically, like they're kind of copying what we're doing." And bearing in mind the absurdity of that stems from those models, those large language models, stemmed from, in some cases, even knowingly taking copyrighted, um, content, books, white papers, what have you, and using them. And then when somebody says, "Hey, wait, I didn't give you permission," they'll just say, "Oops, well, but okay, won't do that again." The model's already learned it. It doesn't need to fucking learn it again. It already, has absorbed it. So, if you eat my cake and then apologize, well, what the fuck do I care about your apology? You already ate my fucking cake. Like, what am I gonna, So, it's not just that kind of bizarre shit. But in America, the large language models, and we'll get back to China in a second. It was kind of believed that we could just finally get enough NVIDIA chips, like high performance chips, to, sorry, keep running over the cable here. But we would get enough horsepower to make this shit work, right? So for one thing, that's a fuckload of money that you're paying to buy the chips, on the electricity, etc. And but then China is doing it in a somewhat different way. It's much more efficient, and it does seem like it's kind of taking best effort, would take the best effort. We're not gonna spend as much whatever on it, but it works pretty good. I don't know shit really about how Chat GPT, messing with that all that much, but I was messing with the DeepSeek, and it's I mean pretty interesting. So, um, and so, like, again, America, we're spending a shitload of money in all of this stuff. I mean, and obviously I'm just barely touching on, back the way things used to be when people, and I'm sure there are academics that are trying to see, can we truly emulate intelligence to the point that, like the Turing test, we really don't know the difference. But where it would be, original intelligence, it wouldn't be that we just have loaded it up with so much exposure to human speech that it's just real good at faking it. you know. But it would be like almost like a sentient being, right? Um, so I'm sure some people are pursuing that, but for the most part, companies are pursuing the type of shit that, like I was dealing with today, virtual assistant or whatever. You're talking to something that does sound very much like I'm talking to a person, but they're not very bright. But the thing is, they had to pay for that once. And some of the companies that are doing, that are in that space are probably doing it at a loss, would be my guess. Because they're trying to get people in, get used to using their product, like Microsoft and whatnot, or Google, or OpenAI. OpenAI, that is non-profit, but yet the majority of them is actually the profit wing. They talk about things as far as the profit that they need to make, etc. So the non-profit part is just kind of theater, it would seem. So, I guess where I'm trying to go with this is, capitalism and just the kind of thinking that we have. There is no such thing, and there hasn't been for a long time, of common good. Or, and even the whole America first, rebuild America, whatever kind of bullshit, politicians. And, Trump is a politician. I mean, he was depending on what you mean by that, I mean, he was a politician before he thought of going into politics. Because he was a wheeler dealer, schmoozer. He does seem to be real good at reading the room and knowing what bullshit to, kind of fan out on the crowd. And, like seeing him talk to, on like the rallies and all, I mean, he tries stuff out. If it doesn't work, well, then he doesn't mess with it again, right? But, like nobody really is for America. There's no such thing as, well, if we have poor people, then that's a societal failure. We ought to help people. But the thing that we learn from capitalism is, if you're not rich, you're a lazy fuck. Sorry, but that's just, and that's what those kind of people say. You need only listen to Elon Musk is a great example, right? But I mean, there's plenty of others that talk about, we need to, turn everything into automation, press the, any kind of wages down into the dirt, make people hungry, so then people aren't going to ask for that raise, that, 5 cent, 25-cent raise or whatever they thought they were going to get. And to feel bad about expecting a raise. You bust your ass for 25 years or whatever, you're supposed to feel bad about wanting the company to pay you more. Because they've got all the shareholders they need to pay, right? They need to buy back the stock to artificially inflate the price of the stock, which isn't quite the way those CEOs will present it, right? They'll say it in a nice, nice, I don't know what kind of way. But that's what it is. I mean, when you buy stock back, the whole idea is you're reducing the supply of it, which then makes the remaining stock individually worth more, right? I mean, it doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist to figure this shit out. And so I'll part with, a long time ago, Well, actually, this is totally different. But so I'll come back to this some other time. So, all right. Well, that's it. See you guys later. Take care.